Skål! Every good conversation starts with a slurp of raw milk. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. My last video, I ended talking about synchronicities. And I want to get to that, but in order to get to the topic of synchronicities, I feel like I should really just flesh out my story and speak from my experience, and maybe some of you can relate. In order so I can get to the broader points I want to make around the mysterious and magical nature, and sometimes scary nature of when the internal meets the external, i.e. you start experiencing synchronicities. So on this channel we talk about bereavement, grief, dealing with grief, stages of grief, all these things. And to say the least, this is a very wide, varying topic. And death can trigger one to be very existential in nature. And what is more varying and broad than the topic of existence? It wouldn't be an existential journey if we didn't question why we're here. And the path of the existentialist inevitably will encounter the spiritual dilemma. Because death can trigger you to question everything, your deepest belief structures and your own biases. So when someone dies, it's perfectly natural to ask yourself, where are they now? Have they ascended to some sort of place or descended? Or are they worm food? The natural path of grief is encountering the question, what is spirituality? What is religion? What is this existence? What is this reality we find ourselves waking up in every day? The spiritual confusion of the modern world, it offers up a menu of options to choose from. And this can be dizzying because of the sheer amount of information that's out there on the internet. Option paralysis. So Steve Jobs famously wore the same outfit every day in order to limit the brain power that he needs for doing innovative things with tech, and that's a time saver. So he just had the one outfit every day. Otherwise you're in this state of like option paralysis. Well, the same is true for the unending spiritual belief systems there are out there in the world available to us to study and adopt, and this can stun us into a state of paralysis. Our ancestors normally had one belief structure that the community or tribe or town or whatever the country would believe in. Everybody you would unite around one principle, one system of belief, and you know that was probably very stable. It was very stable for the people, but like, and no doubt it would brought enormous value for everyone to be on the same wavelength, so to speak. So it no doubt served its purpose, and societies benefited in sharing these common belief structures. But as time went on, these spiritual systems, belief systems, became institutionalized religions. And no doubt they still brought lots of value, but not because of the religions, so to speak, but more so the underlying archetypal themes that the religions adopted these stories and welcomed it into the fold, and distributed it out to the masses. The underlying archetypal themes running through these stories were the really things that people took of value. That's why people still find it valuable today, even in our modern, cold, sterile world. So these archetypal themes are true. These patterns and archetypes are things that our soul can recognize and latch onto and say, this feels right, and on the intuitive level, and this is why they're still here today. If you think I'm being gross by drinking out of the bottle, don't worry, this is not a communal bottle. I drink this to myself. I drink one of these a day. I have plenty more. Anyway, never before in human history have people had the access to all of the world's spiritual teachings throughout the ages. We have it all at our fingertips. We have the ability and the potential to be able to study all of these ancient systems and their similarities and commonalities and see what really works for us. We have unprecedented potential to acquire knowledge that our ancestors could only ever dream of. Yet, most of us are still caught in the net of spells that powerful wizards cast from high towers. So, consumerism, materialism, grind culture, white knuckle until you retire culture, trust the science culture, gorge on pleasure culture, conform to trends culture, trust big brother culture, don't cause a fuss culture, stay connected with your online avatar and signal to the tribe culture, conform with the guidelines culture, drink and party on your only 2 days off a week culture, stay on the hamster wheel of distraction after distraction until you grow old, pay taxes, get diagnosed, suffer and die culture. Dramatic enough? At least that's the world I was brought into. But despite this, there are waves of newly awakened humans that are daring to ask big questions and try to reimagine what it would be like for humans to reconstruct the image of what a modern day human looks like, what we can strive to become. Like some type of Ubermensch idea of adopting all of the power and all of the treasure that humans have accumulated throughout time, and now we have access to these things. So what now can we do with it on an individual level? Availing of the wonderful modern privileges that modernity gives us and acquiring information on how to best improve themselves, both spiritually, mentally and physically. But just like not all health protocols fit in every person, the same can be said spiritually. However, there are major patterns and commonalities that can be that largely applies to most people. For example, most humans would do better with more natural sunlight, with eating whole foods and, rigorous, challenging exercise. The bread and butter of the physical health space, so to speak. But the same can be said for the spiritual practices. I'm not breaking any new ground in saying that, that most religions and spiritual schools throughout history teach similar principles, but like I said, in the major patterns, most people would do well adopting the commonalities that these schools teach. But when I was thrusted into the world of trying to decide which God fitted my spiritual shoes, it felt like I was using Google Maps with no internet connection. I was at the mercy of whatever and whomever was in front of me with a convincing argument, and I was at the mercy of that dogma. But I didn't start there, and where I really started off was being an atheist. Well, I guess when I was a kid, I was a bit agnostic, but the real spiritual journey started when I was an atheist, and I was a militant one at that. My parents weren't religious, and they grew up inside the classical liberal atheist worldview where, science was the closest thing to a belief structure. And many people in Ireland were understandably really sick of the state of the Catholic Church after all of the abuse scandals throughout Ireland and general corruption nationwide. People were done with the Catholic Church, and understandably so. The scandals were mind-boggling to wrap your head around. So the Irish naturally took on a very, very cynical approach to anything that smelled of the divine, and unconsciously welcomed anything to replace it, because it seems that humans can't not believe in something. But 20 years ago, business was booming, and there was no real reason to question the status quo of things, because the rationalist, materialist worldview of science brought so much prosperity. You would be a fool to bring up anything to do with God, faith, or belief. So it was in 2010, my dad died of cancer. After a very short and swift and brief diagnosis. It was very quick, relatively. After he departed this world, my teenage brain carried on this belief structure and continued and doubled down on the stance that there is nothing more to this reality. When we die, We're worm food. We are atoms and molecules, and consciousness is a side effect of evolution, nothing more. But like most teenage boys without fathers, I quickly became a statistic of depression, addiction, and unemployment. And I lashed out in all sorts of ways. My mum had been very sick with MS my whole life. She was bedridden, of need of 24/7 care, and in the last 5 years of her life, roughly, she had to be fed through a tube, liquid meals fed through a tube directly into the stomach. So she couldn't even indulge in any form of pleasure in terms of tastes, or she was completely immobile. She could barely move at all, and the suffering that she went through was such a not only obviously physically suffering, because she was in a lot of pain and always so susceptible to infections, and the mental game more than anything. She's just having to stare at four walls every day. It was crazy level of suffering, and I saw her go through this suffering. It really rubbed off on me. It really made an impression on me, on my worldview, and it shaped my conception of what suffering is and how to deal with it as a consequence. Her brothers and sister, her parents, and the general wider family, and the carers and me, we all took care of her after my dad died. We all took turns every day, and it was mainly my extended family that looked after her. Everyone did such an incredible job at looking after her. Everybody just went above and beyond the call of duty to show up for me and her after my dad died. And it was really cool to see, to be honest. They did such a great job. They really did. But even on the best of days, no one, and I mean no one, could ever fully satisfy answering the spiritual dilemma of what the hell was going on. We had no structure. We were a family of atheists trying to deal with the problem of suffering. It is a very, very hard metaphysical question to satisfy with an atheist worldview. No one could fully justify or satisfy the sheer level of unfairness that was placed onto her. Nobody knew what to say because there was nothing to say. Life's a bitch. That's what I remember hearing close to every day. Everybody said it, including my mum. Life's a bitch. It's a cruel, harsh bitch. And there was just a palpable resentment emanating from the home as a result of this worldview of not being able, well, how else can you conceptualize it with no metaphysical substructure? So everyone did a remarkable job at keeping spirits high and trying to keep life as normal for me, my mum, as possible. But there's always an undercurrent of nihilism, hopelessness, and some quiet desperation. All of it was just amplified so much after my dad died. My mum was just thrusted into a new realm of existential suffering, and she was constantly flabbergasted by how unfair situation she found herself in, always questioning what did I do to deserve this, and why me? Of course, understandably so. Why is life so inexplicably cruel? Even in the developed world, how come there's still so much suffering? So there was this unspoken vibe in the whole family that life was just a cruel, harsh bitch, and any god that would create such an existence wasn't welcome in our home. So naturally, I took on this new generational inheritance of maintaining this belief structure. I carried the banner of the total rejection of anything divine. I was given the task to reduce all miracles to coincidence and to mock and ridicule anything lofty or just anything that smelled of divinity. And ultimately, as a result, I became a victim to like whatever cultural god the masses had in store for me to unconsciously worship, because like I said before, people can't help but worship things. They can't not believe in something. I think, in my opinion, the Irish were very, very satisfied with Nietzsche's announcement of the death of God. Society was stewing up a new belief system. Luckily for Ireland, the new global hegemony had a new morality in store, the neoliberal progressiveness, and with its own set of mortal sins that thou shalt not commit, and you know, the blessed path to redemption, so to speak. But regardless, I found myself in a dilemma. You know, I was in a deep nihilistic depression for years, engulfed in addiction of worldly pleasures, avoiding anything that resembled a hero's journey. Even very shortly after my mum died, when I was in my most nihilistic state, there was a spark, something I found in me that began some type of search for bigger answers to bigger questions that my soul was searching for. There was a start, and I didn't know it at the time that it was a start of a spiritual journey, but I didn't know it at the time, but this was my first movement. This was my first attempt of a movement away from nihilism. I can't emphasize just how extreme the nihilism was. I remember being at a local pub, maybe a month or two after my mum died, and you know, guilty as charged, I had a few pints in me, and I remember going to the toilet and I just had this moment where I just said, fuck it. Nope, don't care anymore. I'll live how I want to live, you know, like I don't care. And I thought it was like an empowering thing of just saying fuck you to society and I'll pave my own way, but really it was saying, no, fuck life, fuck existence. I'm not going to engage in anything that is productive or that will benefit me. So I fell into the deepest state, nihilistic state you could possibly imagine, and I stayed there. That was my new home point updated. Oh God. Energy levels increasing. So during this time, when I hit this rock bottom, I had been smoking weed for years, indulging in all sorts of pleasures, and I was unemployed, and I just spent most of my time at home smoking weed and eating crap food and just ignoring reality. And I did this for quite a while, but even then, there was something in me that wanted to, there's some part of me that wanted an answer to bigger questions, that wanted to ask bigger questions. Like even then, and it was the start of a spiritual journey that I didn't know I was on at the time. And this took the form of me attempting to become sober and to begin a healing practice, to begin the process of healing and focus my attention on some greater mission, and to say yes to life and embrace all of its elements. But inevitably this felt like I was like a kite in a storm, and I was up against insurmountable odds. So naturally I would only last weeks or months in this sober phase, trying to get my life together with exercise and diet and stuff like this, but then I would fall back into addiction. And in these healing periods I would desperately clutch to these type of online gurus and people that I really found inspiring, and I began to practice alternative ways to heal. I knew very early on that the mainstream approach wasn't for me. The approach of ruminating on trauma and constantly repeating the narrative of what caused the trauma, reinforcing the victim mentality, and never offering any real solutions for the trauma other than pills and psychiatric bullshit. So I knew very early on that the mainstream approach wasn't for me. So I turned to alternative voices. on the internet, and people who offered up a more animated approach to healing that like revitalized the soul and encouraged the re-empowerment, and rejecting the culture of forever diagnosing, forever labeling, and forever victimizing into ugliness and life denial ultimately. My first tangible and successful experience doing in this world of self-improvement was becoming a follower of Wim Hof. Wim Hof, the Iceman, the legendary cold guru of breath work and cold exposure. If you don't know him, look him up, he's a legend. And he talked a lot about when he first discovered the cold, that he had this aha moment of being like, oh, this is what I've been searching for all my life. All of this spiritual journey I've been on, trying to figure out what philosophies and stuff suited me. When he got into the cold, it was like, that was, this is what I've been looking for all along. I had a version of that to myself. I didn't really fall in love with the cold, but I kind of did, but it was more so I fell in love with the nature aspect of it. I really, really felt like, nature has some answers here majorly. Like, it just seems like it has way more comprehensive healing modalities than anything us humans could ever conjure up. Like, nature has everything. It has all the remedies and the medicines to rebalance the scales of sickness physically and spiritually. And at the same time, I became very interested in the Eastern practices of meditation, and especially the meditation of the desire to doing away with all desires and allowing everything just to be here now, and how great the now is and can be, embodying the being part of the human being and allowing the flow state of existence just to carry me along, the ever-present now, the stillness of the current moment, the space between breaths, the return to nothingness and its fullness in everything, the paradox of wanting nothing and having nothing and acquiring everything in the process. Powerful stuff. So combining these practices with cold exposure and breathwork, and a reasonably healthy diet, I felt like I made leaps and bounds of progress. And I began to look at death like just another half of life, like another yin and yang, a necessity. It's weird. Death took on a very beautiful appearance, like a very epic aesthetic that was like some climax to an epic movie, or of an ethereal necessity of existence. Doggo, there's Leia, as in Princess Leia. Yes, I'm a Star Wars nerd. Do you want to say hi? Yeah, so death really took on this transcendent force that counteracted the nullification of modernity's grayscale nature. The Eastern approach really had enormous benefits for the mind and body, and its grounding in practical elements helped firmly reclaim my sovereignty. Somewhere along the way, I kind of grew tired of showing up, of neutralizing myself, of doing away with my ego, using psychedelics to kill my ego over and over, and meditating everything away until I'm left with nothing. A human being doing everything it can to not have a human experience. And slowly but surely my addictions kind of crept back in. I eventually gave up entirely on the Eastern practices, and I became a slave to my vices, and generally repeated this cycle of hitting rock bottom and getting sober and adopting the Eastern principles again and growing tired, and repeat. Every time I went in and out of these cycles, each time the healing became a little less effective and the depression became a little bit more serious and meaningless. My vices became less effective at escaping reality, and the healing sober phases, they were more numb, and they felt like they were on a clock inevitably going to just crumble. So it felt like it was the ultimate even when I was in my healing phases, it was so nihilistic, because there was almost like there's no point to this, it's inevitably going to just collapse from underneath me. So I would cycle these 6 month on, 6 month off, roughly, give or take, for years, 7 years or so. And the default to nihilism was inescapable. Every time I thought I reached escape velocity, it pulled me back in from some new angle, a new rock bottom of hopelessness and depression. Like a game of snakes and ladders, and I just kept landing on the snake, and all the way down I go beneath the surface of light, and I'd have to dig myself back up with, blunt tools, and my spirit was demoralized. I would gorge on weed and food, get lost in a fairy tale of escapism, and abused porn, and disrespected my anima to no end. And I got lost in that for quite a while. And I'll be getting into that way more in some later videos in terms of the effects of what these addictions can have on you, and the difference it makes when you cut them out. So I exploited my trauma by allowing myself to remain a victim, taking advantage of other people's pity, and becoming a weak shell of a person that I once aspired to be great. Not to mention living in a society that is bred to demoralize people into thinking that they have no real power, influence, or respect. The poisoning of our bodies on an industrial scale in every single facet of life. The food, the environment, the social hubs, everything. The attack on the sacred feminine and the divine masculine, the cheapening and confusion around basic principles like biological male and female, and the difference between that and what gender is, and the catering towards nonsensical ideas rooted in nothing but ideology that you just had to accept, or else you're a bad person. The extreme divide of left and right, and the crazy internet culture of having to pick a tribe, and the compulsive mandate of following the experts on health, and what we all had to go through 5 or 6 years ago. We don't really talk about it anymore. We're just like, oh yeah, that happened, and we're not going to talk about all the recent evidence to suggest that a lot of it was very, very shady, and the maddening silence imposed on the dissonant voices with alternative ideas. This was, I was like 24-ish around the pandemic, and this was enough. All of these factors just crushed me back into a state of depression, nihilism, and addiction. The shoehorning of policies that no one voted for by non-politicians that nobody elected, the incessive algorithmic push to be a drone of corporate interests amongst a herd of hollowed out souls, and the crushing weight of modernity to become an NPC and take your place in the rank of toxin-bearing, propagandized bugmen. Yes, Nietzsche's last man. But all of this opposition, all of these obstacles and challenges, and yet, even in the darkest of nights, the deepest of trenches, in my underworld of meaninglessness, there remained the slightest glimpse of a flame, the indistinguishable light at the center of centers, the divine spark that illuminates the void. The flame imperishable keeps lit amongst the weight of the thorns and the nettles and the heavy metals and the microplastics. This flame, this spark, this life force is the thing that has kept me going through the hardest of these times, and it's the reason why I never gave up. It's the reason why unaliving myself could never be an option, and why the road goes on forevermore. Until the West calls me into the undying lands. For all my Lord of the Rings fans out there. But anyway, yeah, sorry for the drama. I did drama when I was a kid for years, so I have a flair for making things very dramatic, but I would say that my life has been pretty dramatic, so I'm going to try be as authentic as possible. But I'm going to cut it there, and I'll continue this kind of journey that I've been on how this is all relating to synchronicities. And basically, I can't get to that level. I can't get to the synchronicities until I flesh out what led me to get there. And some people find God through the miracles and the joy and the divine amazingness and the love of the world, and other people find God through finding the devil first, so to speak. And I think I could safely say I was one of those people. So I'm laying the groundwork to tell you, hopefully some of you can relate to just the modern dilemma that a lot of us find ourselves in, the despair of the situation, especially right now when we're hearing about these Epstein files and the crazy stuff that we just like, this can't be real. This can't be real, right? Like, no, we're just gonna rather switch off and pretend that this isn't real. But so yeah, I needed to flesh the beginning of this story out, and then I'm gonna pick up in the next video talking about basically how I moved away from nihilism into a state of a spiritual option paralysis, of being thrusted into a world of belief where I didn't really know where I was going. I went down a crazy road of not knowing where to place my faith in, because things happened when I started to live more authentically, live in truth, live in love, trying to embody the love frequencies, and more importantly, more than anything, remaining authentic and true into my own self and into the best I could in the world. And as a result, synchronicities started to pile into my life, and then they led me into a certain direction of acting and behaving a certain way, and then it all kind of like snowballed into its own force, where basically I thought I was going crazy for a little while. I thought I was going schizophrenic. I was talking to spirits in my head. I was having massive conversations with entities not of this world. I thought I was going nuts. But ironically enough, I would felt the most sane I ever felt. Like, it felt so correct and right, and it brought nothing but good things to my life. So it's a wild experience to go from a complete, atheist, like mocking the idea of anything spiritual, to becoming a religious zealot for a while. Because when I first started believing, I kind of followed Carl Jung's advice by saying that if at the very least follow in the footsteps of your people when you're unsure spiritually. So that's kind of what I did. The country I lived in, my granddad, my extended family in the country I live in is, Roman Catholic. So I'm gonna at least attempt to follow in their footsteps. And so yeah, the religious zealot for a while, but that didn't last long, because, well, I had all sorts of experiences around OBEs, and which just broke apart my worldview several times. I just reshaping my identity over and over and over again to the point of exhaustion. So that's what's coming up. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate your time and energy, and because I no doubt I'm freaking waffling all over the place here, and well done to you if you're still listening. But hopefully this is of some value, and maybe I can just get better over time talking to you guys about these, because they're hard topics to talk about and flesh out, but yeah, so thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.